Mike Barrett here to entertain you with the help of John Carpenter. No, this is not a film reflection of Halloween. It's just the movie Prince of Darkness by John Carpenter. Just got a lot of percussionists and weird sound effects going on, and I was finding it difficult to put any of it to that cheesy keyboard. Anyways, this is going to be a film reflection of the Mike P's film reflection of the film by John Carpenter, Prince of Darkness. Thought about doing one for They Live, but there's so much out there on that movie. I had to do Prince of Darkness. Not as much out there in Prince of Darkness as there is the movie They Live, so I had to do something with Prince of Darkness. So, Prince of Darkness, John Carpenter. This is the third, possibly fourth time in my life watching the film. The first time was when I was a kid in the theater watching it. Second time was more than a little over a decade later when I found it on a VHS and rented it from a local library. And then third time would have been 2010 when I bought this DVD collection, John Carpenter Master of Fear 4 film collection, including The Thing, Prince of Darkness, They Live, and Village of the Damned. And that time I took notes on it. I'm going to start this film reflection of this time watching it with the notes I took when I watched it back in June 7th, 2010. I've been taking notes on movies for a while now. Spoiler alerts are in order, so if you've never seen the movie Prince of Darkness and you don't want any spoilers, well, go watch it and then come back. But anyways, so the third time in my life watching this film, these were the notes I took back in June 7th, 2010, what would have been the third time in my life watching the movie. So, if God is in fact benevolent and more powerful, the girl, meaning the girl at the end of the story, is in heaven because to leave her where she ended up would be a treaty violation between God and the devil. It must have been something I was just learning or something, or just heard about recently in church or something. Then I wrote back in 2010, the dream I thought was an excellent metaphor for God's way of being more technologically advanced for the purpose of getting around the treaty. And apparently, back in 2010, I was totally sold on that concept because I wrote awesome concept, exclamation point. So, I go on to write. Okay. Basically just, I saw this film 3 times in my life. When it was new in 1987 at the movie house with Paulie. That's my father. We affectionately call him Paulie. Again, in around 2001, 2002, about when I found a VHS copy at the library where I used to live. And now, so this was the third time in my life watching it, June 7th, 2010. Then I went on to write, first time I was 10 and it left me with a feeling of maroon completely. Second time I understood the technical story but still was at a loss at the way it ended. This time I'm happy to say I get it. To me in 2010. Artwork was changed to incorporate Alice Cooper's face. An aftermarket business decision, no doubt. I had to chime in with that one. That's the aftermarket distributions of this movie incorporated Alice Cooper's face, because even though his character is but simply a deranged homeless person, possessed homeless person. Okay, so this is my 4th time in my life watching it, and here it is, Mike Barilak's film reflection. Mike B's film reflection. The film opens with an old priest dying, clutching a golden box that has a key to a door in it, and leaving a diary, which ends up in the hands of the priest that takes over, played by Donald Pleasance. I think that's how you pronounce that. I'm not sure. It's the guy who played the Michael Myers shrink, if I recall, from Halloween. Or wannabe shrink, I don't know. Haven't seen that one in a while. Well, anyways, the diary of this old priest who dies ends up in the hands of that priest who takes over, Priest Loomis, and he in turn hands it to the college professor who is volunteering along with some physics college students. The actors, most of them, my guess is they're in their 30s, but they still were young enough to portray college students. I get the impression it was a university in Europe. So this Professor Barrick is asked to go to this church and study this presumed phenomena. There's talk about how the order of the universe is incomprehensible to the human mind. And there's a supernova going on on the news at one point, you see, which is related to subatomic particles, and also is happening in conjunction with this college finding at this church. They mentioned the habits of this priest that died. He basically lived at this church. He closed the church years ago. Lived there, went out once a week for food, and opened a specific door in the church. A door that led to a basement where, using biblical knowledge, the deceased priest was trying to cage this evil thing. The diary was written in Latin and Greek, and I think some old Hebrew too, probably. As the priest, Loomis, has taken the Professor Barrick down to the basement to see this thing. Basically, this green liquid in this big old tube. He's like, the Vatican didn't know about this? And there's in the translations, in the books and in the diary, there's math that human beings did not invent yet from 2,000 years ago is included in these translations. The knowledge of all this, apparently, for the sake of the storytelling and the film, the knowledge of all this was passed down from priest to priest over the years, 2,000 years. And nobody ever questioned, the Catholic priest. We're recently in the world, we're learning that's probably not a good idea to not question a priest's actions. But for the sake of storytelling in this film, we'll play along. There's mention about how common sense breaks down on the subatomic level. It's like it reminded me of the sensation in your mind when something almost makes sense to you. It makes complete and total sense to you for a millisecond, and then poof, it's gone. Did that ever happen to you, or maybe it's just me? I guess I'm weird. But throughout the film, especially watching it I watched it like a couple times, but the first time I every time Alice Cooper's the homeless deranged character came on, I was like, uh-oh, it's Alice Cooper and his band of homeless degenerates. And when he makes his first killing, I'm like, that's for not buying my new record. The mathematics that they're finding in the translation feature differential equations from 2,000 years ago, and the kid, one of the college kids, is like amazed at this because like human beings didn't even invent differential equations yet. Here we go off into some movie making magic biblical translations, I guess. It says 2,000 years ago, the root of all evil was sealed in the container, quote unquote, for lack of a better term. And Jesus Christ was a humanoid extraterrestrial being. And the transcripts that they're deciphering in the story are trying to decipher are undecipherable. And the computer genius in the story, what was her name, Lisa? Yeah. She points out that they were to the point where there were. It seemed as if someone or something was trying to erase them. The one of the physics students, Walter, the guy named Walter in the story, he goes, "Why am I studying this weird stuff?" Another student, Catherine, reminds him, "Oh, because it's part of your grade. It's part of your getting that degree and everything." And they're like, "Oh yeah, now I remember. A millionaire by the time I'm 40." And the Catherine character says to the Brian character, who are basically the love interest in the story, although that part of the movie is kind of a whirlwind, there's more important things to get to. But she says, in regards to the Professor Brack, "I read all his books. He's a brilliant man." And the first time I watched it, I thought, if only she knew this novelist for real, she might have a different opinion. So these students the Professor Brack volunteers these students to stay at this church to study this phenomena as part of their grade. A common theme throughout the film is the whole nature's versus intelligent human common sense, or rather misplaced faith in human common sense. And the devil locked away in this, or the source of all evil, whatever, locked away in this container for 2,000 years and kept that way because the outside world had no time for this BS. And actually, a real good dialogue scene that I thought was pretty good between the Brack and priest Loomis character in the story, where they're talking about how the real world didn't want to know about this stuff, so this priest that is now deceased, and all the ones prior to him, took it upon themselves to contain the devil in this thing for all this time. And the priest says to the professor, something to the extent like, the world had a right to know. We had a right to warn the world about this whole thing. And the professor says, without scientific evidence, it would have been just another another myth, but anyways, so basically the devil was their prisoner in the content of this story. I think John Carpenter knew that this film was going to need somewhat of a body count or possession, because it's got a pretty huge cast. The priest that passed away had made it a point to keep the church closed so that he could focus all his energy on containing this evil thing. But the priest Loomis, his now that he has control, his thing is he wants to reopen reopens the church. To which one of the deranged homeless people says, "Oh, Father, it's so great you're opening the church again." And he's holding a cup of what are maggots and bugs or whatever, which made me think of Japanese lore, horror movie lore. Apparently in Japanese spirituality, there's a fine line between the spirituality and that itchy, buggy feeling. Or so I've read. I learned that from comic book reading, actually. So all the while, this evil entity is getting stronger. And even though they're being stalked by homeless people outside this church, they're still able to order in for pizza. I noticed anyways. I don't know if that was a movie mistake or maybe maybe these deranged possessed homeless people don't bother the pizza guy. I'm losing the sunlight, so I had to turn the light on. So at this point in the movie, Alice Cooper makes a killing, or rather, his character does. I don't mean record sales. I mean he actually kills a guy in the movie. His character, anyways, the deranged homeless guy, whose image they use on later distributions of the movie because of his fame. I would imagine that was probably the case in Europe. So eventually they figure out that this green liquid phenomena is trying to manifest itself into the physical world. Of course. The point is made that if you hide truth, physical substance can be seen as God. When I was 10 years old watching this in the film, I didn't understand it, of course. I was just a child, but it did hold my attention. I can't say that. At this point, the film becomes a kind of hide-and-seek game with this girl with who wears glasses. Is infected with the green stuff and therefore possessed or corrupted, however you want to say it. And the first killing now takes place inside the church. The third killing is again outside, when the homeless woman who was talking to the priest who took over later on. And then there's a dream that they all seem to be having that seems to be transmitting a message, which really amounts to the most ominous part of the storytelling. So the girl with the glasses then corrupts or possesses the Lisa character, who then the two of them corrupt the math guy. What was his name? Calder, that was his name, the black guy in the story. So you got, so now the devil has 3 servants, I guess. Oh no, 4, because the girl with the bruise on her arm decides to take a nap. Unbeknownst, the bruise on her arm was her way of, and her way of becoming possessed, I guess. But now possessed, the Lisa character, the one who's in charge of making the translating the scripts, the transcripts, is typing up on the computer over and over again. I live, I live, I live, I live, I live, I live, I live. And this is supposed to be telling us, the audience, that the devil has become self-aware. But all of them in the story are having this same dream, which is more like a video image being played backwards through time. Or that's the conclusion that is meant about it. Then there's a message from a gurgly voice outside after a guy's head falls off, just before a guy's head falls off. Some go crazy, committing suicide. The black guy, Calder, he slits his own throat and walks in the hallway singing Amazing Grace. Which, when I was a kid watching it, I thought it was just crazy. But seeing it now, it's like his humanity is fighting the possession within itself. That would also explain the extreme perspiration upon his person. This green liquid, the container opened itself and is somehow projected itself onto the ceiling, and the few chosen folks still moving around as servants of evil, whatever, and the bruised girl whose belly's growing, filling with this green liquid. All this is going on, and the homeless are still stalking them outside. The homeless just will not let these people leave the church. So the character Walter becomes trapped in a closet. They have to dig a hole in the wall to save him. In the meantime, while everything's quiet down, he takes the opportunity to flirt with the possessed girls, adding for a little humor in the story. Then the girl Catherine has the dream that the rest of them had up to this point in the story. And like I said, when I was a kid watching this, I thought the black guy was just going crazy. But Calder, that was his name. But when I saw it now, he's like a man trying to keep or rekindle his humanity. When he looks in the mirror and sees what he's become after he's been possessed, that's when he slits his own throat and is walking through the hallway singing Amazing Grace. It's almost as if his free will, his free spirit, is fighting this evil possession. The acting was pretty good in this movie, actually, by all the characters. The girl with the bruise, Kelly was her name. Her belly was filling up with this liquid, does go down, and the liquid absorbs all in her. And now the devil, this evil force, has now manifested on its way to manifesting itself into the physical world. So at this point, Kelly is a demon now, and Walter wants out of this closet in a hurry, so he starts, digging from his end. And I thought, why wasn't he doing that to begin with? Instead of flirting with these obviously spaced out females, he should have been digging his way from the other end. But at this point now, he's frantically digging from his end. And Kelly, who is now a demon, looks in the mirror and says, a compact mirror, from a compact thing, Father. Unfortunately, it's too small. All throughout the story, there's always this emphasis on the whole mirror image thing, which made me think of in his image. But it's like when I watched it the first time, I was like, it's like the evil phenomenon was trying to know God too, maybe. But I don't think God would allow God's self to be pulled into the physical world unless God wanted to be in the physical world. Damn it. I knew I should have did this in 2 parts. So anyways, but then I concluded after watching it again that God is beyond the physical world and would have no self-interest in entering the physical world. Repeat, self-interest. So this thing must be evil or anti-God, like the Professor Burrick was saying about the mirror image, the anti-God. Yeah, because initially when I was watching this, I was thinking maybe it's not evil, it's just incomprehensible to human beings. But then I said no, because God is beyond the physical world. One thing that I thought was interesting in regards to when on the computer, when the evil or devil, whatever, Prince of Darkness, the beast, whatever you want to call it, is self-aware, saying I live. I live. He also types on the computer, the Holy Ghost cannot save you. God Plutonium cannot save you. In fact, you will not be saved. You know, as far as I believe, God did come into the physical world once, a long time ago, for not for self-interest, but for grace. At least that's what I believe. Yeah, I don't know how many views this is going to get, but whatever. I got to finish this. So, Priest Loomis ends up trapped alone in the room, same room where Kelly, as this demon now, who is trying to get the devil's attention, Father, through the mirror image, finds himself trapped in the same room with her, where there happens to be this big full-length mirror, big enough for her to reach in and pull Father through. Through mere chance, there's an axe sitting on the floor, and the priest Loomis, looks at the axe and looks at the mirror and looks at her and looks at, I could. It's like, his faith in what's going on here really dictates his actions at this point in the story. But Calder throughout, the black guy, he's obviously a man who is visibly struggling with the good versus evil battle within himself. And I think that kind of John Carpenter, I think, was trying to communicate that through the severe perspiration. So at one point in the story, Professor Byrick says something that the phenomena, this evil entity, can control simple organisms, individual human beings, no problem, but needs something more complex to complete a life cycle. And when I heard that, I was thinking, you mean something like conception? But back to what I was saying before. Furthermore, with the whole, if the evil entity was in fact evil or not. But no, the God would not need help from lowly humankind to come into the physical world. If God wanted to come into the physical world, he can do it, no problem. He already did it once. many thousand, a couple thousands of years ago. Okay, so the climax of the story basically is she's reaching into the mirror. Kelly, as possessed by this demon, reaching in the mirror to pull the hand of the beast, for lack of a better term, out into our world. And the two love interests, Brian and Catherine. Catherine sees what's going on and sacrifices herself, pushing Kelly, the one possessed by the demon, into the mirror. The priest throws the axe at the mirror, shattering it.